We've gone through this once before. We've seen it happen once before, and I don't think we can let it happen again.
All right, Dagan McDowell, Dan Mitchell, what do you think of that? I mean, it sounds good on paper to say, no, tough love. George Bush was a fan of... Really, Dagan? Really?
They told me to dress for cold weather, and I'm up here sweating like Siragusa.
All right,
What's
well,
going
Dan,
on,
I'm
dude?
glad you hopefully cannot see this, but really. All right.
What, you promise us a Davos, and I get newsroom, and it's like 80 degrees up here. Thanks for that.
Okay, great. Well, she is just
disrobing.
Right now, a wardrobe malfunction. But Dan, you heard the drill. You have these candidates kidding, notwithstanding that. Look, we won't do what they did then. But I cannot imagine, Dan, that if a Citigroup or Bank of America were on the ropes, and you're looking at a gazillion depositors who could be out of a lot of money, that they'd let that happen. What do you think?
I think Chris Christie's right. We shouldn't have capitalism for Main Street and socialism for Wall Street. But here's the thing to understand. It's not an issue of whether or not depositors go under. It's an issue of whether or not you're bailing out shareholders and bondholders. We should have done in 2008 what we did back in 1989 and 1990 with the savings and loans. Let the institutions go under. Let the shareholders and bondholders get scalped, but you bail out the depositors, because that's what deposit insurance is all about. And even though in my libertarian fantasy world we might not have deposit insurance, that's at least a reasonable, workable system. Let the institution go out of business, protect the the depositors, and let their account simply transfer to a new institution. Mm-hmm. That way, the big money people on Wall Street, if they touch a hot stove, they burn their finger, and that's what you should have in a free market.
You know, I think what he was also saying, that is Christie, Dagan, is that, well, I don't want to even lay out the possibility that they would have that from a President Christie, when in fact we know it's more nuanced than that when we get to that point. What do you think?
I think that you're right that you don't like a bailout until it's your bailout. And bailouts in this day and age come in all shapes and sizes. And I don't know how you can't look at the $60 billion in federal aid that went to the states in the Northeast after Hurricane Sandy. Something that Chris Christie will be remembered for when he was hugging on President Obama. So be very careful when you start to slice and dice what is a bailout and what isn't, because people who get flood insurance country, including the residents of New Jersey, that insurance is subsidized by taxpayers who live in the hinterlands and subsidized to the neck. So let's be very careful. This is a bailout nation, unfortunately, and bailouts get handed out by every president.
And people come to expect it. But Dan, you raised a good point about the unexpected consequences. But the argument for the bailout back then was that there was a credit freeze globally. Money was just locked up, and governments had to do something to intervene. I also, though, agree with your point that what you do for one, you later, as we did, do for all. And it sets a dangerous precedent. But the first president or leader who espouses tough love or says, no, I'm going to let a Bank of America go under, or Citigroup go under, isn't he a one-termer?
If we go back to 2007, 2008, this is some history people have forgotten. The first financial institutions to go under, WAMU and IndyMac, they were dealt with the right way. The institutions were shut down. The bondholders of the bank and the shareholders of the banks, they got hit. But then, when Hank Paulson at Treasury took the whole process over, he said we have to bail out the institutions rather than bailing out the depositors. And I think that's the giant mistake, because an ordinary depositor...
But I think it's going to happen again, Dan. I don't want to rain on people's parade here. I think it's inevitable.
But it shouldn't, because we don't want a bailout nation, whether you're talking about states...
I think we're going to revisit a crisis like that, and your best advice when we do is don't, right?
Don't bail out the institutions themselves, only bail out the depositors. That way you cauterize the damage and limit it.
But what about, I guarantee you're going to have calls for helping or bailing out, whatever the word you want to use, energy companies in this country. When more and more of them start going bankrupt, what are you going to do? You're going to try and prop up energy prices? Are you going to start buying oil in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? Those are the questions that could very well be faced. with the next president.
So you have to be black and white on it, right? You have to be, no, not a little bit pregnant, right?
Exactly, and I think that, you know, it's like President Bush was a proponent of bailing out the auto industry. He was still president when we bailed out the banks. It's very easy to say I'm not going to do it until that crisis arrives at your doorstep.
And it did. It first arrived at President Bush's doorstep, so these Republicans have been attacking President Obama. He was just following from that, building on it, but following on it. Thank you both very, very much.